error. So
What was the user error?
I just had the settings. The output was to the mic.
Oh,
but I still
That'll do.
Oh, hey, do you guys like my name?
What is it?
yeah, dude, it's great. What's FDS stand for? Oh, it's
That's
like
great.
scripture. Got it.
Yeah,
That's great.
get there a little faster.
Took me a while.
Hold on, I gotta go reopen that Google Doc.
Oh my
Babe, come say hi. She ran away. Hold on. There it is.
Does this out me when does yours also say app is not focused when I'm looking at text messages right now?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, we know.
I don't exactly know what that means,
Nice.
but it does say app is not focused pretty frequently.
It just means that I have something else pulled up right now.
Oh, really?
Like what if I pull up my texts and my texts are like my main focus? Then yeah.
Oh, what? I didn't know that.
So you're exposed when you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
I
When-
just thought that it was like a connection issue.
Nope.
Oh, I was gonna say I have like 7 tabs open.
Babe, come say hi. Come say hi to the people. Drew is running late, so we're just getting started now.
I had to poop, you know?
Typical.
Hi,
Oh, look, it's Kelly.
What's up?
it's
It's our
Kelly.
favorite Harrison.
I don't mean to
What
disappoint.
do you mean?
Well,
Look at your husband's
Look at-
name.
where's your name?
You have to hover over it.
It's very kind.
I'm surprised he's even addressing you at
A
this
lot of
point.
bad blood right now.
Dude.
I'm curious if there's a way that we can turn off his camera on this.
I
Yeah.
feel like you guys have like a good amount of stuff to talk about on this.
Yeah,
on
I think we
this
should pull up
episode.
Ryan Gosling's IMDb and we will go through and categorize every single movie into one of 2 categories.
Did you hang up? Oh, you're back.
He's back.
Okay. Well, good luck. Good luck roasting. I expect
Sadness.
to laugh at all of the burns.
The burns.
The burns. You gross.
Welcome to the Sweet and Condensed Podcast, a podcast by people who love movies, people, and the magic that lives where they meet.
Okay, everybody. Well, welcome to the Sweet and Condensed Podcast. Today, we're doing a Living a Stream episode using the Jimmy V 1993 rubric. Today, since nobody asked, the streets have not spoken. We have, I guess it doesn't work for that part. Because the streets have spoken. We have the one and only New Mexico Drew back on the podcast to talk about his full watch, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which is unfortunately what Ryan Gosling is burdened with. But anyways, Drew, thanks for joining us tonight, this evening. Everybody, for those listening, this is a long time coming, not just because it's been a month since Drew's been on the pod, but it's a long time coming because this is the 3rd time we've tried to do this episode. The first time Josh got sick. The second time Drew got called into work, his HR department. He almost got fired. I don't know, something crazy. Just kidding. Josh, cut that out. I'm just making stuff up. It's late. Just kidding. It's a long time coming. The people are excited to have Drew back, excluding myself. But Drew, thanks for joining us this evening. What's been going on?
Other than trying to do this podcast, this is the 3rd time, I do think. But, 3rd time's a charm.
3rd time's the charm.
3rd time's a charm. I've been working. I've been getting my kids to school because school has started back in the full swing of things. And, there's not a whole lot else going on in my life. Watch some movies, hang out with my family, go to work, do some suburban dad stuff. Pulled a lot of weeds this weekend. That's about it. What about you guys?
Yes. Hold on. Your Letterboxd is a little bit dry.
Hey,
What have you seen recently other than Blink Twice?
Other than Blink Twice, let's see. Well, I'm waiting until I finish it. I did watch Starship Troopers on my phone the other night, but I still have 10 minutes left. And I live by the JP Purist Code of Conduct where you are not allowed to log a movie unless you watch the entire thing. So I'll be adding that bad boy soon. But I love Starship Troopers. Such a great movie.
Josh, why did you just give him eyes?
Well, I just don't understand. Do people log movies if you don't watch them?
I did that once.
Which one?
Hold on, let me
I
pull it up.
love this.
Well, because I had seen it before. It was a rewatch of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I just,
And you use it as your favorite watch of the week? Favorite watch Wednesday? You're lying to the people?
No. No. Hold on. I watched everything but the last 20 minutes and just threw a rating up. The next night I finished it, and then when I finished it, I submitted. I'm definitely a purist about submitting for
Okay.
sure.
I mean, well,
But rating on Letterboxd, especially a rewatch.
okay.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't be that mad at you because Sarah is out here throwing in YouTube videos and commercials and the Olympics and stuff. So you could pretty much
The Olympics is. I remember when Kelly did the trailer, and we were like, "That's
Yeah.
kind of like, let's go." But Sarah, like, the Olympics is not like that is wild.
I mean, to be fair, one, Kelly did open the floodgates with the trailer. Two,
With the trailer.
AMC
It's
was
Kelly's
playing
fault.
the Olympics in the theater. Like, you could book a ticket and watch
true.
events in the theater. I'm not saying that I know Sarah watched in theaters or at home. I have no idea. All I'm saying is that's kind of wild.
It is. I'm gonna say that the Hims commercial that always plays on Hulu is my favorite watch this week. The multi-generational one where it's like the dad who's like, I use Hims for hair loss, son. And then the older brother who's like, I can't get it up, little brother. And he's like, I use it for face cream. And it's just like everything that's wrong with men, Hims is gonna solve your problem.
Is that what
Favorite
it is?
Watch Wednesday.
Like
What?
a catch-all?
Now it is. They're expanding, man. You know,
Interesting.
it's expansion. Yeah.
I
Because
had
if you've
no
got
idea.
ED, you've got bad skin and you're probably bald. So
Huh.
him just trying to save your life.
All right.
Favorite Watch Wednesday.
Favorite
Be
Watch
on the
Let's
lookout.
put a clip in. Let's talk to the producers of putting a clip in of that commercial. Right here, it's a commercial break. Him sponsor us. Oh my!
And then
God.
did you see the podcast title? The Unbearable Weight of
No, what
Knowing
is it?
Ryan Gosling Has No Range.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, Josh agreed. He loved it.
I did not. Okay, context here is this week we'll give you all. I don't know when this is coming out, but we'll give you all a heads up that we were talking about which actor, male, female, any person that has the most range. And I, of course, mentioned Ryan Gosling, and apparently that is blasphemous when it comes to range, according to Drew Scripture.
Let's actually set the record straight. We have a group thread that every week we share the takes for Tempty's Takes. Shameless plug. If you don't subscribe to our newsletter, please subscribe to our newsletter, sweetandcondensed.com. You can subscribe. Every week we pick a new take. The crew weighs in and we always share the take. And inevitably, doesn't matter, child actor, best female actor, best non-American actor, doesn't matter. Somehow Josh and Eric are going to fight over who's going to pick Ryan Gosling for whatever it is. And this week, to get out ahead of it and to spare the people and the crew from their shenanigans, I said, finally, a take where Josh and Eric can't pick Ryan Gosling. We're going to be talking about actors with the most range. Sorry, you in the front. Not taking any questions at this time.
Listen, this is you actually, people listening, don't subscribe. This clearly shows why we're biased. The producer who sent the prompt, it was almost like you're in court and there's a leading question because he said, here's the prompt, don't include this person. Like, where's the freedom? Where's the freedom of speech?
I mean, if you just want to have garbage takes, then sure, you can include Ryan Gosling. I think we should do it. I think you should pull up his IMDb, and we will go through every single movie, and it will be in one of two categories: hot funny guy or hot broody guy. I'm not saying that I don't love almost every single Ryan Gosling movie, but that is the depth of his range. Hot funny guy, hot broody guy. Sometimes he gives us both, like in Remember the Titans.
Sometimes you get the best of both worlds. Range.
It's not range.
Speaking of range, speaking of movies, speaking of probably not great takes, Drew, why don't you tell us what you know what? This is Josh Erasure. What have you been up to, Josh?
This is also Eric Erasure, dude. Okay, so because it's the 19th time we've tried recording this episode, part of what I'm been up to, and we haven't been able to talk about since we did talk about it and that episode exploded, Eric turned 30. And I can't let this episode not talk about how Eric has literally harassed and hate crimed all of us over the age of 30 for the last year in the group message, off the group message, on phone calls, in the Craigslist ads. He Yeah, tell us, Eric. How was your 30th? What does it feel like?
How's it feel being old and dusty?
It's dusty up here. Yeah, if you guys are ageist, you can't subscribe to the newsletter because it got a lot of old folk in here.
Does that include Kelly? Careful, she's listening.
She's looking right
Oh,
at
no.
me, and she just mocked me. um, sorry, babe, but everybody's pretty. This is an elder millennial podcast and newsletter for sure. It feels good. Feels good to be 30. I had a great party. My wife has been around the block as she is in her mid 30s, so she threw a great party. We might have to cut some of this out. But it was a fantastic party. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll find us on our socials. You'll find a cool reel that highlighted it. But I don't feel a whole lot different yet, but it's good. It's been fun.
Yeah.
I will say that as I've hit 30, I realize the older I get, the less I know. And that's the fun of life, you know?
I like
That's
that.
good.
Welcome to this side, dude. Welcome to the enlightened side.
The enlightened side. Oh man. All right, Drew, tell us about your full watch. As a reminder, this is Living a Stream version of our podcast. So it's the Jimmy V 1993 speech rubric. So it's a show, documentary, or movie that held us in thought, made us laugh, or moved our emotions to tears, whether tears of joy or sadness. If I already said that on the podcast, the producers can cut that out. I feel like I did. It's deja vu. But anyways, Drew picked the movie this time. And so let's hear, Drew, what is the movie that you chose? I'm excited about this one.
Yes, it is The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, starring Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal.
So currently, it's streaming on Peacock. I almost just said Netflix because it's like trained in my brain to say everything is on Netflix when Netflix has been trash lately. Sorry, Netflix. It's streaming on Peacock, and the description reads, facing financial ruin, actor Nick Cage meets a wealthy fan and must channel his most iconic and beloved character. Beloved?
They both work.
Sarah, help. Characters to save himself and his loved ones. It's sitting currently certified fresh, 87 for Tomato Meter from the critics and 87 from the audience. So verified score. I gave this a pretty high score on my Letterboxd. I was thoroughly shocked. I thoroughly enjoyed this, whatever the proper words are. Yeah, I give this a 4 out of 5. I was shocked. Directed by Tom Gormican and written by this same Tom. I'm not going to say his last name again because I don't know how to say it. And Kevin Eden. But yeah, you said it was Pedro Pascal, Nick Cage. This was a blast for me. But the people who are listening who may not have seen this might be wondering, a Nick Cage movie is a full watch. Tell us more. So Drew, maybe dive in a little bit there.
All right, you guys told me I have a full 3 hours to begin my dissertation on why it is my full watch, and here we go. No, in all seriousness, I think there are quite a few reasons it's a full watch for me. First and foremost, it is my favorite movie of all time. So look at my Letterboxd, my top 4. It's listed as number 1 on purpose. And when I first talked about that, Eric asked, like, seriously or in a joking way? In a serious way, even though it's really funny. In a serious way, this is my favorite movie of all time. And it's also a full watch because of when I saw it, like where I was at in my life and the moment that it met me at. And then just the movie standalone by itself. I've watched it a lot of times after that, and it still just holds up. And I think it's wonderful and perfect and incredible. But yeah, I think it came out in April 2022. I had just moved to Denver by myself. My family was still in Florida. My wife was, holding it down. She was packing up a house, getting ready to sell it, and like taking care of our kids by herself. So she's like a super trooper. And I moved out here by myself. And I was, very sad. I was a sad boy, just living by myself in a dumpy ass Airbnb with this old lady. She lived in the basement. I lived upstairs, and it was the worst. And I was all by myself. And a mutual friend actually let Josh and I know that we were both living in Denver. We'd both just moved here not too long before that. And it turns out that Josh was also a sad boy, and he was here all by himself, and we were just trying to figure out life. And it was one Saturday. It was I was particularly feeling bummed and blue, just missing my family, just asking existential questions like, what the hell am I doing with my life? Why did I move here? All that fun stuff. And Josh texted me and said, "Hey, I'm gonna go watch this movie. It has Nick Cage in it, and you should go with me. It's this afternoon. So I said, sure, why not? I had nothing else to do. So we went AMC, cover your ears, but this is a shout out Regal. We went to the Regal on I-25 in Colorado, which I'd never been to before, but Josh had because he was a Regal pass man back then. Again, AMC, cover your ears. We're sorry. Please sponsor us. And we went and watched this movie, and it just wrecked me. It was a perfect moment in time, about Nick Cage, being a working dad, trying to figure out his life, wrestling with the fact of maybe he ruined his life for his career, finding friendship with Pedro Pascal's character, who's absolutely brilliant, who plays Javi, and two grown men finding friendship and bonding over movies and their love for movies. Reminded me a lot of Josh, and I know that he loves that he's Javi in this story. So, and I think it was just a magical time in my life for it to hit me, and it wrecked me. I laughed, more than I had in a long time. I cried a lot, and it definitely held me in thought. So that's why it's my full movie.
So 2 follow-ups to that, Josh. I want to hear your experience for sure. But first, you said you were having this sad boy moment when you watched it. So Josh, tell me your experience with this, but also maybe what led to like that sad boy moment, because I think that's my favorite thing about movies is that it might be a 5-star, 1-star movie just because, not this movie, but some movies you might watch and it's a 5-star, 1-star because it was the time and place. So like, tell me more about that, the way Drew just said. Tell the listeners.
Yeah, no, that's something I really do love about movies is that you can watch a movie at one point in your life and watch it again later, and it does feel like it's familiar, but it's a different experience, or it speaks differently to you. And I had obviously never seen this one. It came into theaters. I was living in Albuquerque and just needed a change of pace, and my brother was like, "Hey, move up here and live with me for a few months out in Castle Rock." And all I knew is that, winter is coming. Like, it's going to be a frosty state. And so I don't think I was necessarily ready. Even, I don't know if everyone does this, but when you get ice on your windshield, you have to scrape it off somehow. And usually you get, regular people have the scrapers. And I used to use credit cards in Albuquerque. What of it? It works just the same in scraping the ice. The ice out here is built different, dude. I used my Amex and it chipped and snapped and it was all torn up. And every time I used it, the people would be like, "Did you get hungry?" and make a joke about it. And I'm like, "Yeah, I just ate. What do you mean?" And then I look at the card and they're like, "Oh." So, anyways, I was not ready, dude. I was not ready for the cold. It's a different place. It's a different beast out here. So after winter came, I was just like, yeah, just in this, what am I doing with my life? And at that time, I'd moved to Denver, away from Castle Rock. Shout out the Skorkas, shout out the Perezes, shout out Desi and Amber for housing me. But yeah, is like Drew had mentioned, we had a mutual friend that was like, "Dude, this is wild, dude. Like, 2 of you are in the same city, you had no idea." And so yeah, we just started hanging out, went to the movies, and this was a very existential 30 days for me because prior, I think it was either just prior or the week after, Everything Everywhere All at Once came to theaters, and I watched that movie a few times, and sandwiched in between or right before was this movie. And so I just remember thinking that like there was all of these multiverse type movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once. I believe the Marvel Doctor Strange movie was coming out in the like Madness universe or something. And so there was all these movies that were very meta or multiverse related. And I remember this one, I did a minor amount of research and they're like, yeah, it's very Nick Cage playing Nick Cage. And like, I love Nick Cage. I will watch anything with Nick Cage. My parents had him running all the time. I'm talking like The Rock, Face Off, Raising Arizona, Con Air. And so growing up on Nick Cage movies, this movie was very appealing. And also, he kind of disappeared for a bit. Last I heard really about him was that he was in some debt because he kept buying castles. And so he started making these movies and not in the United States. And then he came here and he still making movies in the States. Anyways, Nick Cage playing Nick Cage and being aware of Nick Cage sounded like a blast. And so it was one of those movies that, yeah, it made me think, laugh, and tears of joy in some regard. And again, it might be because of Pedro Pascal's like just tender, sweet heart of talking about Paddington, which we can get to in later on when we start talking about this more in depth. Or maybe it was the fact that there was these two people that became friends through a connection of movies and their love for movies. Like Drew had mentioned, I'm still obsessed with movies. And so it just came in a good place in my life, in this timeline of Josh's new life in the 303. And so just having this movie and then building this friendship with Drew, when yes, like we're trying to build new community, yet like Drew had mentioned, his family's in Florida and I'm trying to just build a new life and trying to figure out new things out here. It just felt like we're in that similar place. And I think sometimes like when you're, I don't know, two people are sad about something and their own thing, of some reason it makes it less sad, which sounds shitty. But so yeah, this movie was really, really just great for all those reasons. And then rewatching it for this podcast episode was the second time I've watched it. And it was still it was a fun experience. But Eric, this is your first watch, right? This was your first watch for this podcast?
This was, yeah. I was actually just thinking, I think the first time we tried to record this episode, which had technical difficulties, I can't even speak. We were talking about, or I think I had mentioned, like, movies where there's like a fantasy, action, adventure. It takes you out of your world into that world. But then there's movies like this that kind of you can relate to your life. I think you can do that. And I don't know if I would split it up anymore, because even something like a fantasy or action or adventure movie, if you feel like you can relate to the character even a little bit, it feels so good. It's so much fun and it draws you in. So I don't know that I'd separate it like one takes you out, one you can pull in and relate to. I think you can do it with any kind of movie, even those large, grand scheme, like a Dune. If you want to, somehow you can relate to a character in one way or another, and that's so fun. So again, you asked if this was my first watch. It absolutely was. It was on my radar. I just never watched it. And not that I thought it would be a 1-star movie. Like I said earlier, a 5-star, 1-star movie, because this was not that. I loved this. It was so much fun. It was so shocking. And I almost went into it thinking there's no way this is a full watch because of this podcast. Because it's like, oh yeah, we're going to do a full watch. This is the pick. Unironically, it's a full watch. And I'm like, so I went into it with that frame of mind, like, prove it. Let me see. Right. And then it just has these great themes. And again, one of those movies that, again, this wasn't necessarily fantasy, but outrageous in like his battles with the cartel, but these sweet themes about him and his daughter, and like I said, the sacrifice he was making. So yeah, it was a great time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I'm interested too, like, are there other movies that maybe you guys think of that might have hit at a certain time, certain place in your life? I think we may have talked about this before, that just maybe will be in your, like we talked about, maybe top 4 Letterboxd, or just in general that hold value in your heart, a special place. I think I've mentioned it dozens of times on the podcast. The Dark Knight, for me, everybody loves The Dark Knight, but it will always hold a special place no matter how many times you can poke holes in it, because of who I was with, midnight premiere, beach balls in the theater with my friends with Joker paint on my face. Like, there's nothing that can take that away. Whether or not, I mean, it is a great movie, right? It's still, people regard that as like as a classic for comic book adaptions. But even if it wasn't, it's still, for me, that's one of those. And I have a couple others. But what about you guys? Are there others that come to mind like this? Even, I'm almost more interested too, if like, even if it's could be technically a bad movie, because this one isn't, that you're talking about, right? Like Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is a great movie that also happened to be that. But are there any just maybe even B movies or not, that just like time and place for you?
Joshua.
Okay. B movie.
It didn't have to be a B movie. It didn't have to be like a.
Okay, I'll say 3 movies. Everything Everywhere All at Once. I just mentioned it here. I'd watching watching that movie the first time, I felt like my life was spiraling and nothing mattered, and I had to, like, not that I wanted to watch it again, but I had to go watch it again in theaters, because, and a part of that was, again, I moved in November 2021. I watched Everything Everywhere at Once in March, April 2022. And I had just gotten into a master's program. And for the most part, you're like, oh, that's exciting. But I was like, what am I doing? Like, why did I applied here? What am I doing? What's the plan after that? I'm in Denver. I hate the cold. Like, all of these things of, yeah, what is life and what's going on, and all these universes according to the movie, right, that says that there's a lot of different universes and every decision creates a different universe. And I just couldn't help but think like, well, what if the life I'm living is the worst life possible? But yeah, I watched it a few times and it became a very beautiful thing. And I was like, oh, it's not that it just flattened my life to nothing. It actually elevated it. And it was a beautiful thing. But Sound of Metal, which is connected to this, the same thing of like, I had watched that right before I had left, and we did an episode. So one on both actually Everything Everyone's and Sound of Metal. So we did do episodes. So if you want to hear a full version of this, Eric and I yapping about it, you can go back and listen to those episodes. But Sound of Metal is about a drummer who lost his hearing, and it was something he loved, and he was afraid of relapsing. His community was afraid of him relapsing, so he goes to a hard of hearing rehab facility to learn how to hear again in a new way, through sign language, through receiving a new identity and all this. And he wants to get the surgery so he can hear how he used to, but it just forever was changed. And I felt very similar to that. Like I had a lot of shifts. I changed. I had a lot of shifts in my life with work, a lot of shifts in faith, a lot of shifts in community. And before I left Albuquerque and then after leaving, it felt like there was continual shifting and I was learning how to hear again or learning a new way to communicate, even though there was a part of me that longed to return to what was before, but embracing this new and foreign and unknown was difficult. But when I did embrace it, it became this beautiful thing similar to the movie. So again, I think that movie was particular, but the B movie is A Knight's Tale, dude. I think it's an A movie. I think it's top tier. Rotten Tomatoes says it's a 59, but I don't know, dude. I think it's fun that Heath Ledger's in it. I think Heath Ledger being in your Time and Place movie, Eric, is not coincidental, dude. That dude brings it. But that line where he says that someone can change their stars because he was a lay person because it's in the medieval time and he becomes a knight, even though he was I don't know, for lack of a better word, he was like a peasant or like a lay person, right? I don't know. I don't know the like.
You're gonna have to bleep that one out,
Really?
dude.
Is that bad?
Yeah, not just.
I have no idea. It's medieval time, dude. They use words like peasant, I think. Anyways, Sarah, help. But that movie, we just grew up watching all the time, dude. Me and my brother is one of our favorites. And then now as an adult, it's like, it's never too late to change. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to seek changing your stars. And so that's a beautiful thing. But anyways, popcorn, Drew.
I definitely, I think there's a lot of movies like that for me, but sticking with the nostalgic, when I first watch it, what it reminds me of is The Goonies. That movie, I think it is a classic and a lot of people really love it. It's not like the greatest technical movie. You know what I mean? It has a lot of issues about it, but I think it's a perfect movie. And it's mostly because first time I ever watched it was with my brothers and older cousins at my grandma's on a VHS. And it was always at my grandma's and it was always playing at my grandma's. My grandma loved it. So that one will always remind me of that. And I can watch it a million times and I'll never, ever get old. It'll never, ever get old. I think like probably not like the best movie. I've told both of you this story before and Josh had to live it, but the latest Bad Boys movie, we were doing a double feature and we were going to see The Watchers and Bad Boys Ride or Die. And that's the last one, right? Ride or Die?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I was like, no real expectations for Bad Boys and was hyped on The Watchers. And for whatever reason, it was really reversed where I was not a fan of The Watchers, but Bad Boys just wrecked me. It was like from the opening sequence until the end, Martin Lawrence just had me howling and cackling in the theater. And I think Josh probably, I'll let Josh speak for himself. I think Josh probably thought some parts were funny, but I remember looking over at him in the middle of one of my gut-busting fits of laughter, and he was just staring at me with like a smile on his face, like I was a freak for laughing so much. And I don't know what it was. It honestly felt like I was on laughing gas. I couldn't help it, but I understood that there were so many things wrong with the movie, and that this was not gonna be winning any Oscars or anything. But I couldn't help myself. I absolutely loved it and had the best time. I may never watch it again just to preserve, like bottle that experience and just
Well, you can't go back if it's not
right?
good. Yeah.
It'll just kind of ruin it. So maybe I'll just hold that as a special moment forever. But yeah, I think now think movies, if I think about it that way, movies are almost like little collections of things. Like Talk to Me is one of my favorite movies ever. And I think it was because it was just these two young Australian brothers who only ever made YouTube videos that were given a shot by A24 to make, a full feature length film. And I think they did a really phenomenal job with it. But it was also because it was around spooky season when my wife, Brenna, and I and Josh were like trying to watch as many scary movies as we could. We were trying to help Josh grow up and watch some scary movies. And that was one of them. And I just remember I loved the movie when I first saw it, but then watching it on the couch and watching Josh and my wife just like want to, fold in on themselves when the super gruesome stuff was happening. And then laughing about it and talking about it afterwards was just really, really fun. And that was a really, really fun moment in time. So yeah, I think a lot of those movies that just kind of find me wherever I am are special for those reasons.
I think that's cool too, what you said about, I was thinking about different stages of my life and I can like pinpoint a specific movie. So Step Brothers for me in high school,
Mhm.
like it may not hold up. I haven't watched it in a while and I don't know if I want to, but I saw it in theaters multiple times. Watched it for like 2 years straight with some friends from school because we just had the rowdiest time ever watching it in theaters and like just a dumb comedy. And like, so that was like a comedy defining my high school years too. I think about what you said with your grandma's house, what was playing. This is so weird, but my great aunt and uncle, my brother and I, when we would spend the night there, they had like this large bookshelf that the top half was just VHS tapes. And it was always The Patriot, always The Patriot. We watched The Patriot so many times at their house. And so like, that's just one of those movies. Anytime I think of The Patriot, or think of Mel Gibson, or think of an action, shout out Heath Ledger, baby, The Patriot pops up in my mind. I can feel it. I can smell it watching it. And that's why The Shining, for some people, it's not rewatchable. For some people, it's not even scary. And again, Jack Nicholson is in two of my like top fives. But because of where I watched it at a friend Jordy's house, all the neighborhood fellas were like, in their garage was a living room. And so they turned it into a living room. I think in one of my takes, shout out the newsletter again, we talked about video game adaptions. One of my takes is about Doom, talking about playing Doom at the computer. This is the same living room. But anyways, we watched The Shining. And we were way too young, I think, to probably have watched it. And it really scared us. And his dad would like, for sleepovers after that, pop out of the attic in the living room when we're playing games and scare us and just make weird noises in the hall. That maybe shot me into loving horror, and again, like I said, for some people it's not rewatchable. For some people, they can't even sit through it. It's a long one. And I know there's a lot that went on behind the scenes that makes it kind of a questionably moral movie. But again, it's just one of those, right? So I like to think about that. Like, why do I love horror so much? What really started that? Or what was that movie for me in elementary school, middle school, high school, college, and these different moments? Like thinking about Kelly and I dating, the first few years of us being together was always early 2000s slasher movies, just nonstop. Like I had never seen Joyride was one of the takes recently in the newsletter. I'd never seen it. We were always at Hastings. And it was always like B slasher films, like Wrong Turn, Hills Have Eyes. All these are just slasher movies, but that's like the first few core years of our relationship. And so it's fun to think about that with movies and in that sense, like periods of your life, whether it met you in an emotional way, like you two when you first met and saw this movie that we're talking about, or just other points in your life. Really quick, speaking of Nick Cage, I was thinking of like what movie of his kind of defined what I thought about him. And I think last time I talked about Ghost Rider, but I never mentioned Gone in 60 Seconds. I feel like I need to rewatch that because I remember loving that. And I've been Googling it during this episode just now. And there's that meme that he's like, let's ride.
Mm-hmm.
And I really need to rewatch that. Just shout out Nick Cage.
It's incredible. It's an incredible get the
right?
band together.
Is that?
Oh,
yeah.
man,
Okay.
it's so good. Come on.
I feel like I've got to revisit it for that reason. That was 24 years ago. This is his golden era.
Makes me feel so old. But I say that all the time. I always quote, I'm a little tired. I'm a little wired.
Yeah. Hey, the way you really do good impersonations, huh? A little wired, that hit a little different. Do it one more time.
Oh, I don't like being
just one more.
Just one more. Maybe later.
Hold on. Okay. Silence. All right. Go. Action.
I'm a little tired. I'm a little wired. And I don't remember the next part.
That's so great.
It's a
I
gift.
need to watch Long Legs again so I can start doing some Long Legs impersonations, doing the sing
Just gotta
song.
get the fingers right.
Yeah.
Let me in now.
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't sing that. Kelly will not be happy with me if I'm singing that in this house.
Oh yeah, no.
Her birthday was a couple weeks after the movie, and one of the lines that I like repeated it to her. I was like, "There she is,
Oh no.
the almost birthday girl." She's like, "Don't ever,
Oh man,
don't ever."
you're gonna
say
be
that
sleeping on
again."
that couch you're sitting on right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh
that's
man.
funny.
What else we got, boys? What do we? You know what? I don't even think we got into what actually held you in thought the most, or
Yeah.
made you laugh, or made you emotional from this movie. And when I say this movie, we went on a couple tangents. I'm talking about the unbearable weight of massive talent.
Yes. So what held me in thought the most was, yeah, like I said, I moved to Denver for a job. It was for a promotion within my company. It was the second time I'd moved across the country for this same company for a promotion. And, for me personally, whenever I was faced with those decisions, it was like, oh, yeah, like this is the best thing for my family, because if I get a promotion, better visibility in your company, you can get better pay, etc. I thought I was doing the right thing for my family, but, you kind of look back and you blink and your kid is, that was a tiny baby, is like a full blown kid now. And you just kind of like, where did the time go? And that's kind of what we meet Nick Cage. It kind of could have been like modern time, like Nick Cage in 2022. He'd had this huge, amazing career, but it's really funny how on the nose he's making fun of himself. Like, as Josh mentioned, he was just doing Netflix movie after Netflix movie. I remember one time, it was probably like 2013 or 14. My wife and I saw this Nick Cage movie on Netflix, and again, just like Josh, just like you, Eric, I grew up in Nick Cage stan, love him and everything. And I was like, oh my God, we got to watch it. And it's like, the plot was really strange. It's like, the city guy who's Nick Cage goes to the small town and rescues this woman who's in an abusive relationship with this, hick ex-boyfriend or whatever. And we're like, this is so bad. We like had to turn it off. And so we pushed the back button. It's like, you might also like, and there were, I swear to God, like 19 different Nick Cage movies that all look the exact same. And I scrolled on one and you read the description, and I kid you not, it is the exact same plot as the one that we had just watched, and it wasn't that movie. So anyways, we meet Nick Cage in the movie where he is just doing a ton of work. He's not, he hasn't really been there for his family. He's divorced, and he has a daughter named Addie who's about to turn 16. I believe she's about to turn 16. And he is trying to make amends with a career that is probably on the downside, and also be involved in his daughter's life. And he, throughout the movie, basically has to reconcile a couple of things. He decides that he wants to give up on acting because he goes for a big part where he monologues in front of the director and doesn't get the part. And so he decides to give up on acting, and he's in huge debt. So he's going to take Javi's money, which is $1 million, to go to his birthday party out in Spain. And he's going to use that money to pay off his debts, and he's going to retire from acting forever. And I think throughout the film, he realizes, one, that what he does is very important to people, and especially Javi, like how much it means to him, and that he could still do these things that are important to him. But what held me in thought the most was basically at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, if you want to watch this incredible movie, which you should, but you don't want it spoiled, then bounce on out here and come back after you've watched it. But at the end, he basically realizes that although his career is important, there's nothing more important than his daughter, and watching Paddington 2 with his daughter. And it's kind of wonderful how that's set up throughout the whole film. I was telling Josh, like, the movie opens with footage of Con Air when he's finally meeting his daughter, right? And in the movie Con Air, he's trying to protect his wife in the movie, and he's trying to do what he thinks is the right thing, but he kills a dude by doing that, and that's why he goes to prison. And the entire movie Con Air is him trying to get to his daughter and give her the little bunny. And that's where the movie starts, where he meets his daughter and he goes, "I got you a bunny." And he and that's what it is. And it's kind of setting the tone for, this is going to be a movie about Nicolas Cage trying to get to his daughter and realizing that although he thought he had good intentions, although he thought he was doing this for his daughter the entire time, he maybe made some mistakes, and it's going to be about that reconciliation. That's one of the themes. So for me personally, thinking, holy shit, I just moved across the country. I'm lived out here by myself for 6 months. Was this the right thing to do? I thought I was doing it for my family, and just really thinking through that. And I think for me, it was nice because at the time my daughter was only 4 or 5 years old. Yeah, she was 5 years old, about to be 5. No, she just turned 5 years old, and she wasn't 16. So for me, it felt like I had a little bit more time before I, was down the same path as Nick Cage in the movie. So that is what helped me, I thought.
That's great. Yeah, that Paddington scene at the end I'm not gonna say I wasn't emotional throughout the whole movie, but that actually kind of got me a little, because this is again another tangent we're gonna go on, but I really liked that, because like there's nothing a child wants more, and clearly at any age, than you to even just pretend to care about what they care about.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we were reading this parenting book once that was like, if you just clean the house and your kid comes in with like this muddy, what was it? It was like a rock or something, and puts it on the table. Like most parents, their first reaction would be like, "Oh my god, we just cleaned the house." It's like, stop, take a second, and be like, they just want to show you this like dumbass rock. Be like, that's a cool rock. Thanks for showing me. And then you can address cleaning it up later. But like, for some reason, that little analogy always stuck with me with the kids. It's like when they want to show us something in a bad moment, they just want us to even pretend to care about what they care about. Nothing is better for them as a child. Honestly, that's why we have a podcast, even as adults. Pretend to care about movies, people like our stuff, right? Like, so even as I don't know, I love that scene. That felt good for me because our kids are at the age too. We have kids at similar ages where they just want to like the muddy rock. I think about that often when the kids come in with something from outside or home from school that's messy, and it's probably not ideal right now here in this moment, but they don't get that, and it doesn't really matter. It's like, we'll address everything else later. Like, be present in this moment. Like, this is a really cool muddy rock you brought me. Thank you. And then it's like, well, whatever, right? So I like that a lot. That's good. That's good stuff. Sorry I turned my camera off. I had a popcorn kernel stuck in my mouth, and I didn't want you to see me just fingering myself. So, Josh, how about you? What held you and thought the most?
People pay a lot of money for that. We could start a Sweet and Condensed OnlyFans.
Here we go,
dude. The funny thing about Paddington 2, bringing that up, I was like, that was one of the things, in the sense that I've never seen it, and I feel like that's criminal. Everyone talks about how Paddington and Paddington 2 specifically, I think, is like a perfect movie, like the most perfect movie out there. So I thought it was hilarious that it's brought up and by Javi and the daughter. And then I sat there and was like, oh shit, I need to watch this movie. And then I watched it 2 years later for this, and I still thought about the same thing, where I'm like, oh, I still haven't seen this movie. But on a serious note, I think the thing that held me in thought the most is just how aware, like how does one become so aware of becoming so aware, like Nick Cage is, to be able to play himself, make jokes about himself, to be extra Nick Cage, like this, like especially the Nicky stuff, where there's Nick Cage, and then he'll have conversations with, it feels like 1990s or like Ghost Rider Nick Cage with the leather jacket and the slide over hair, and like it's almost like you're making fun. Like you're making fun, like Nick Cage is being made fun of, but he's in it and he's agreed to it and he's the star. And so I just think that is such a beautiful thing of like getting, as we talked about turning 30, Eric just turned 30, I'm 32, about to be 33. And just how am I doing in that world? Am I moving towards this idea of becoming more self-aware of who I am and how I show up in the world, to a point where I'm able to bring a levity to my own self, even when I'm being, I don't know, cringy, corny, obnoxious, goofy, and just not really caring either. And I think that, and of course, I'm talking about someone who's probably, multimillionaire, so it's a different thing. But he's like, yeah, I'll do this movie. But at the same time, though, I think this movie wasn't really known. I don't know too many people who have seen it. Like, I think it might be one of the most slept on movies of the 2020 decade, and we're only 4 years in, and I think it's arguably going to continue to be one of the most, like, a great movie that not a lot of people will have seen. So anyways, just, yeah. I think that part of it's really cool. But like you were saying, Eric, about like movies as portals is something I've been like thinking a lot about. Shout out this dude, S. Brent Plate, who talks a lot about movies as portals and about how it transports us. Movies can transport us into a world, but then we can come back into our world and use what we take from these worlds in our everyday life. And I don't even have kids, and I'm like thinking about that idea of how people can connect with movies. And this goes into a very even meta within my own experience of I'm watching people connect through movies in a movie as I'm connecting with people through movies by watching the movie, that it just feels very Inception like. And thinking about like, if I ever do have kids, connecting to them through movies, not forcing my own love and interest onto them, whether it's movies or other things. But I don't know. I think that there's just so much here when it comes to the dynamics of what it means to be alive and be in community and have a family, that the second time of watching it, I was less distracted by like the whole like, oh my, what the hell's happening? This is amazing, because I knew what was going to happen, and I knew that they were going to pull us out of the movie, and Demi Moore was going to be playing his wife. It's just such a funny, that whole thing had me shook the first time I watched it. But the second time I was able to pay attention more so to those elements, like you're saying, about how he's trying to connect with his daughter and like how he kind of sacrificed family for his career and in the movie. And I'm like, I wonder if that's true, like if he feels that way in real life. And I wonder about myself and what are the things that I've sacrificed for career wise or job wise that that had a huge impact on my own family life and my own relationships. So
And I think you're wrong in one sense. It is completely moral to force the love of movies onto your kids.
which one
They will love movies. Damn it.
which one did you have you been putting on Paxton and Ellie?
They both love movies. They're all about. But here's the thing that's funny about kids movies, like Paddington 2. I haven't seen it, but now I really want to watch it. I've learned more about life from kids. Inside Out 2 is one of the top 10 highest grossing films of all time, and there's a reason for that. When we went and watched it with the kids, Kelly and I are like looking at each other over them, like tearing up. Kids are just having a good time. I don't know. There's something about movies that are directed at kids with adult themes that maybe are meant for them to capture in small ways, but for us, we I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. Maybe we overcomplicate life, and like I think in the Inside Outs do a great job of that. But even talk about shows like Bluey, or even I'll get emotional with Lion King now or Toy Story. My goodness. But anyways, you can learn some of the most valuable lessons about life, not from an A24 film, but from like a Pixar film. I don't know. Pixar didn't have a good run for a while, but they're catching up. But yeah, I mean that's crazy. I was Googling it to fact check myself, and Inside Out is number 10 of all time. Like that's just so wild. Anyways,
Inside
sorry,
Inside Out made me anxious. Like I had anxiety while watching it because of how accurate it was.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. Let's see. I will say when we're talking about what made us laugh, like obviously the movie is hilarious, but plugging my Letterboxd, I quoted my favorite part. Tiffany Haddish was also hilarious, which I think we talked about before. But hold on. It was when the cartel started shooting out with them, and Nick Cage goes, "Given that you saddled me with what basically amounts to fucking penny loafers," like when he's trying to get him to run, it was so damn funny. But again, like I said, Tiffany Haddish, I know she's got so many other comedies, but I just thought she was hilarious in this role, and there were so many scenes that were hilarious, like when he just like accidentally wiped the whatever chemical on himself, and gosh, it was hilarious.
Mhm.
So there were quite a few moments there.
Yeah, I think the writing was just so funny. Like it was so good. Like the little things, even where they recruit, like you had mentioned, he wiped the chemicals on his face because he's working for the CIA. Nick Cage is working for the CIA to try to capture or bust Javi, Pedro Pascal's character, supposedly a drug cartel. And he's so stressed out of like he's so stressed he doesn't know he can do it. But then when he talks to himself in the mirror, he's like, "Oh, I think I can be good at this stuff." Like even how they just have callbacks of like just we're full on this side of it where he's stressed. He's like, "What am I doing? I'm not working for the CIA too." Like I think I have a future in this. And so it's always the little things. And like he had mentioned, they're sitting there with think those penny loafers were like Gucci or something, or Dolce and Gabbana.
Yeah.
And then Nicolas Cage is wearing Vans, and it's just so random where they're like, "Oh, you want to switch shoes? I like those shoes." Or like when they're doing when he goes, "We got to do acid," and Nick Cage is like, "Well, okay, fine, F it, let's do it." And so the absurdity, I guess. I did not expect acid to be done. I did not expect two grown adults to be exchanging shoes. I didn't expect Nick Cage to be talking to himself, or I think at some point he even makes out with himself. Like, it was just so absurd, so ridiculous that I think that made it a lot of fun. Like, it just cracked me up. Like, he sees the statue from Face Off of Nick Cage. There's like a life-size Nick Cage holding the double 45's gold-plated guns, and Nick Cage looks like he's offended. And he's like, "This is hideous, disgusting. I'll give you 20 grand for it." He's like, "It's not for sale." Like, that kind of writing just it hits hard for me. Like, I think it's so funny when you mislead me into one direction and then throw me in the other one. So yeah, the things that I laughed the most about were just those kind of elements, because it just was sprinkled throughout the whole damn movie, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah. It was, I mean, I think it's one of the funniest movies for that reason. Like, I think from beginning to end, it's just a hilarious movie. And I think the dynamic between Pedro Pascal and Nick Cage is just brilliant. Like, their chemistry is perfect. And I was telling Josh, before I'd seen the movie, I saw an interview with Pedro Pascal where he said that he basically didn't feel like he had to act because he actually loves Nick Cage and is so in awe of him that whenever they would be doing a scene, it was like, "Oh yeah, I'm not acting. Like, that's Nicolas Cage standing in front of me." So I think all that genuine little boy, like, like kind of like little kid looking at their hero kind of wonder is all very legitimate and real, and it makes everything really funny. Yeah, the shoe exchange scene, the acid scene, even like on the boat, when he's on the phone with his agent, Neil Patrick Harris, and he's asking questions about who this Javi guy is, and he doesn't realize that Javi is the one actually driving the boat, and he's just like talking shit about him the whole time. And he's like, "What is this? Like, why is he inviting me to his birthday party?" And he goes, "I don't know." And Neil Patrick Harris says something to the effect of like, "I don't know, but if he gets anything, maybe he's weird. Maybe he wants you to suck his dick. Maybe he wants you to fuck his wife. Maybe he wants you to watch him fucking his wife." And then he goes off, he gets off the boat and starts talking to him, and basically runs through that whole thing, and is I'll not repeat it again so we don't get a R rating on this podcast episode, but he's asking him these questions about Javi, and if Javi's going to make him do all of those things. And Pedro Pascal just goes, "I am Javi." And then he does the iconic, because Nick Cage does a Nick Cage, and how Javi just rolls with it, and he's just so enamored with Nick Cage that he doesn't even care. And when he goes up to talk to his love interest, Gabby, and she's asking him like, "How was Nick Cage?" He's like, "He was perfect." And then they're just like swooning over him. He's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Yeah, not too short, not too tall." He's like, because most people on the movies, they're short in real life. I don't know. It's all just so hilarious. And then of course when Nick Cage goes undercover as the Italian as the Italian cartel boss, and he's got the prosthetic makeup on, and he's using a horrible, probably very offensive accent to anybody who's really Italian. It's just incredible. It's a lot. I mean, I think this is probably mostly a comedy movie, so a lot made me laugh.
I think this is one of those movies, and I don't think this is a cop out to say this about certain movies, or maybe that's not the right phrase. It's late. Sarah, send us some tips. I mentioned Step Brothers earlier. There's a couple comedies over the last 20 years, and I know this isn't strictly a comedy, that you just cannot ever remake or replace the cast with. It just would never work with anyone else. And I know there's probably some really funny, self-aware celebrities that this could work with down the line in their career. You talk about a Tom Cruise who's like big name. I don't know. I don't think you could do this with anybody else. And I'm not comparing their filmography by any means, but I'm just saying big names, right? And the reason I brought up Step Brothers is you can never remake that. I don't think you could make that later in their career or earlier. And I don't know if it maybe Step Brothers isn't that funny anymore, and it might not be, but just like time and place for their careers, like Pedro Pascal. When did The Last of Us come out? I should have done my research. Because his career really 2023.
Yeah.
So this is prior to or around the time of all of like his rise to true fame, A-list household name. Because I think before that, the big call for him was not House of Dragon, Game of Thrones, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, just perfect time in his career, Nick Cage's career, and just like I don't know if you can do this with anybody else. And I'm sure people can make the argument that you could, but I love movies like that really you just can't do it again. You can't do it with anyone else. I don't think anybody else could have done Pedro Pascal's role the way he did it, because like you said, now I'm actually thinking about that a lot when he goes, "I am Javi," and the delivery of that, just like I know it was the writing too. Right? Like absolutely shout out credit there. But like that is so there's just you can't. And I like that. There's a lot of movies where you could redo it, right? They're doing a Gladiator 2, talking about big action movies you can recreate. You can maybe swap roles here and there. But I love a good movie, whether it's a comedy, drama, action, fantasy, whatever, that's just standalone and just like works well. Gosh, now I'm just thinking of like the one-liners that only really work, and like because of the way they delivered them, like Nick Cage, like, God, like that's so funny. But also, you do a good impression, so it just works. It makes it funnier as you say it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
We already kind of talked about what made me cry, but
Yeah.
when they because he talks about it with his wife, they're reminiscing because he just screwed up his daughter's 16th birthday by singing an improv song that he claimed to have been writing since she was 9 years old at the piano. Do you remember that? Because he gets the rejection call, he doesn't get the part, and he's drunk, and he's singing about Addie, and his favorite memory of her is when she was 9 years old. He drove her to the Grand Canyon, and they drove through the night, and he was like, and then you just laid your head right here on my shoulder, right there. And he's like, and it was the most beautiful moment of my life. And it's very cringy. It makes you like want to crawl out of your skin because it's so uncomfortable. But it's really cool how they set that up with later on, he's talking to his wife and she's like, hey, you're screwing this up. You just need to be here for your daughter. And he says, do you remember when we lived in New York and she was a baby and we would just sit in our living room and watch her all day and all night, you know? And there was like this moment that he was reminiscing on of kind of what he had, you know, lost. And then at the end, when they premiere the movie and Javi gets to go off and kind of go get his flowers and get interviewed and go to parties and everything, he decides he's going to go home with his ex-wife and his daughter. And they're laying in the living room, right? Just kind of like he was saying they used to. And he asked her what movie she wants to watch. That's where she says Paddington 2. And they agree. And then she lays her head on his shoulder, just like in his cringy story when she was 9 years old. And they start to just like do a slow zoom out. And I broke, man. I cried and I thought about my daughter. I missed her. And I also think, you know, we've talked about this before, but it's not easy it might not be easy for anyone to make friends when they're grown up, but I can only speak as a man. It's not easy for guys to like have genuine friendships when you get older. And it was really cool to see two grown men who had lived so much life basically become best friends. And, you know, being super cheesy and knowing that I was like there with Josh and we were there together and we had kind of been through the last few months together and we were kind of supporting each other. I think all of that, it all kind of culminated in that moment. It was very overwhelming for me. So I definitely cried. And even when I rewatch it, I'll be like in my room watching it on my phone and I'm like crying at the end of the Paddington 2 scene. So yeah, anyway, I might be alone in how much I cried though.
No, I also love the friendship dynamic and how it started. Like I know I mentioned the penny loafer scene, but even the cliff scene of just like someone who's hesitant and somebody else who just like forces you. Those are friendships that I cherish, or those are also points where friendships are created or birthed from, is those moments of like I call it bullying, but it's not bullying. It's like that friendly pressure. Kelly was telling me about one of these books that she's reading where it's like it was a relationship that started off that way. I don't know. It's a certain kind of trope in a book. Anyways, but like their friendship reminded me of that in that way of like, not that Nick Cage disliked Javi. He was so hesitant to everything that he said and did. And like that cliff scene where he was like, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was trying to like act out the movie, right? And so, but beyond that, that's also how that friendship started building, the trust in these moments. And it doesn't have to be dramatic that way, but trust built in uncertainty, or when you least suspect it, with two people who you might even least suspect being friends. I think that's so awesome. So that was actually super fun to watch on screen too. Not just that they became friends, but the way that they did, and that banter when they're getting shot up and even when they're not, was awesome to see.
Yeah, that cliff scene, dude. I think the thing that brought me such joy, and this movie in itself, the reason why I say it would also be a full watch for me is because it starts off with these bits of corniness or bits of life, and it builds and it stacks up on each other. To Drew's point with that last scene, it's like it hits everything, right? Like it's not just them about
Yeah.
watching Paddington. It's the fact that he had never seen Paddington and kind of doubted it, but then Pedro made him watch it, and then both of them were crying, and then he got so when his daughter's like, "Have you seen Paddington too?" It was almost like I have seen it. You want to watch it? I want to watch it. My best friend showed me this movie. Now we used to watch movie, and it was like a culmination of everything that he'd gone through. But the cliff scene, come back to the cliff scene, it was like the thing that I think that made me joyful too is like you're saying that he was trying to act out a scene, and he was trying to inspire Nick Cage to get him into acting, get him to be Nick Cage and fully Nick Cage. And then he got him, they ended up both jumping off the cliff. And he was like, I didn't even know, what was on the other side, and I didn't know what was going to go on. But Javi, Pedro's character, was saying that to Nick Cage because he's like, I know you need it. But I think in a lot of ways, Javi needed it too. But I think that's what's so cool about sometimes with these friendships, and like what to Drew's point about, it's hard to have these adult friendships. And then when you meet and you're talking and you're trying to move through life and be vulnerable in those ways, that I think there was times where I don't know what I'm doing, but I was talking to Drew about, weathering this storm in the winter, and we're getting through. We don't know what the hell we're doing, but like saying things and engaging in dialogue that I was like, oh, I could benefit from this. Like I'm telling this to myself and I'm telling this to Drew. But the fact that Drew was there, it was giving me courage to say those things, or it was giving me courage to live into those things in the same way that Javi, was finding courage to jump off this cliff through inspiring and trying to get Nick Cage to jump off this cliff as well. And so all of those things just kind of brought those moments of like eye-watering, teary-eyed moments in this movie. Was just that, yeah, these build-ups, these the ways that they were there for each other, and just also just how authentic and endearing that Pedro Pascal's character was. Just like it just felt so like real. And to Drew's point, you don't really see, or that's a difficult thing I think for adults to step into sometimes. And the fact that I'm watching a grown ass adult act the way he is and be unashamed was just it was, I think, a very special thing. And it brought joy to be like, there's no, you can live life however you want. And you can live life in an authentic way, in a real way, to where you can get made fun of or say, like Nick Cage was literally talking shit about Javi, or not talking shit, but like questioning Javi to Javi's face, and still go home and be like, he was incredible. Like he was so great. Like that is just this innocence thing, and this thing that I think is really cool as an adult, to be like, I'm just gonna hold on to the things that feel good and inspire me, or that, I don't know, leaning into this genuine interact. Because he was like, I just look up to this person. Even after he said those things, I'm still gonna lean in and be like engage in a friendship with this person. Because I think some people would probably not do that after that. They'd be like, that was kind of hurtful. So yeah, leave my island.
We talked about this maybe like a year ago on an episode. I don't know what the movie was or the context, but Josh, we did an episode where it was like sometimes family is a little too realistic with how they give advice or how they look at your life. But friends can sometimes be delusional in a good way, in a positive way. And like that is sometimes what you need. And I don't remember the context. I'm probably butchering it, but I love that about this. The two of them were absolutely delusional in their own rights, but like, yeah, that something about having a friend who, when you don't know what you're doing, they don't know what they're doing, but they're delusional and they're supportive of you, feels good. And family doesn't always necessarily do that for you. Sometimes it's a friend who has that delusional support. whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. When you need it, you need it. And friends, having a close friendship like that can support, like, whether it's your own delusional dreams or I don't know. I don't remember what the episode was, but we had a good conversation about that. Like, sometimes it's not your family and even friends too, who might be like, well, realistically, here's how you should approach this. Maybe this isn't safe. Maybe this isn't a good idea. And then you have those couple real close delusional friends alongside you. Like, I don't know, if shit hits the fan, I'm here for you either way. Right. And not that family doesn't do that. I don't remember the conversation, but this reminds me of that, like that cliff scene and just their whole approach to life as they became friends.
I'm wondering if it was Saltburn. Because the Saltburn episode is called Friendships, Funerals, and Fonts, and there's a couple timestamps that say like the power of proximity and friendship, and reflecting on personal experience of becoming friends. And Eric makes friends through gaslighting, which I honestly don't remember the context of any of that, but could be that one.
Gaslight for a cause, baby. But any closing thoughts, fellas? Any closing thoughts on this full watch from Drew as he shows us his tonsils?
I only have one. You want to know that's wild? I was 18 years old when I found out I was born with one tonsil, or I lost one because
just misplaced
it because they're like, so why do you only have one tonsil? I'm like, the hell are you talking about? They're like, why do you only have one tonsil? I'm like, I have two. They're like, no, you don't. I'm a trained doctor, professional, and I only see one tonsil in there. I was like, I'd never, why would I just take out one tonsil?
How would you?
And none of my doctors ever told me anything. So don't know what's up with that, but I got one tonsil.
Just rolled with the vibes.
Just rolling with the vibes. Got one tonsil.
Well, let's see it. No.
I honestly don't even know where and what a tonsil.
It's back there. It's hanging.
It's somewhere in there. Thanks for that.
You asked for it. Jesus.
Oh, well, on that note, my closing thought would be, yeah, I think that go watch this movie. I highly recommend. I think this movie you don't got much to lose. It's streaming. I guess you have to buy a Peacock subscription or borrow one. Shout out, you know who you are. Thank you so much. Just in case Peacock's listening, I don't want to dox you. I just learned that from that one down there, doxing. Mm-hmm. I don't want to out someone and lose all our viewing privileges, but yeah, this movie, it's so good. Go watch it.
Streaming on Peacock. Subscribe to the newsletter. We got some good stuff coming. It's almost spooky season, so it's just 4 weeks straight of Josh's favorite shit. Subscribe. We got some good takes. Although I am going to call out two of the producers, Kelly and Sarah. We missed you on this last one, so maybe I'm drunk. Maybe it was the one before that. But anyways, subscribe. Kelly, Sarah, New Mexico, Drew, Josh, and Eric. We got some, I don't know why I said my name. We all have some fun takes. Some of them are questionable. Some of them don't apply to the prompt at all. But tune in. If I say subscribe one more time tonight, I'm going to jump off a bridge.
Smash that subscribe button.
Follow us on social media. It's a lot of fun. So
sweet.
Peace.